Hey guys, tonight we set sail on one of the least terrifying but most bizarre adventures in all of Greek mythology. A deeply confusing cruise involving pirates, dolphins, magic wine, and one very dramatic god of partying. You're aboard a creaky old pirate ship in the middle of the ancient Aegean Sea. The sun is rising, the seagulls are screaming, and your head is pounding like someone's been using your skull as a bongo. Salt clings to your skin. Your tunic smells like old olives. You have no idea where you are. Which, let's be honest, is not a super encouraging start. You sit up slowly, trying not to vomit over the side. There's the sound of muttering and clanking nearby. Pirates, obviously. You're with pirates. Again. They didn't kill you last night, so either they're soft-hearted or they think you're too pathetic to be worth the trouble. You squint toward the bow, where a small group of crew members stands in a loose circle, arguing about something or someone. A man, young, strangely calm, is sitting cross-legged on a coil of rope. His robes are spotless. His curly hair glows in the early light. No one knows where he came from. He just sort of appeared like a pop-up ad in toga form. He's got this expression, like he's very aware of something no one else is in on. That, I know things you don't, smile. You know the type. The kind who always wins drinking games, even when he's not playing. One pirate, who's chewing something aggressively, you hope it's jerky, spits and growls, "He's just some spoiled rich brat. Leave him." Another shakes his head. "Nah, look at his eyes. That's no ordinary man." The ship's captain, a guy with more earrings than brain cells, waves dismissively. "He's nobody. Put him to work." But the weird thing is, no one actually does. No one tells him to swab the deck or hoist a sail or get off his divine high horse. Everyone just keeps staring like they're waiting for something to happen. You shift your weight on the deck and wince as a sliver of old wood stabs your leg. No one offers help. Standard pirate hospitality. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment with your location and what time it is where you're listening. I love seeing how far this sleepy little history cruise reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The wind picks up slightly, tugging at your tunic. Someone finally throws a blanket over the mysterious passenger's shoulders, like that'll do anything to help. You don't know his name yet, but something about him unsettles you. It's not fear exactly. It's that low, humming awareness you get when you realize you've made a huge mistake, and it hasn't even introduced itself yet. You lean over to one of the younger deckhands and whisper, "Who is that?" The kid shrugs. "Dunno. He said something about vines and madness. Thought he was drunk." Typical. Could be a prophet. Could be a lunatic. In Greece, it's often the same thing. The sun's climbing higher now, a bloated peach of a thing smeared across the horizon. The boat creaks beneath you, ropes groaning like they disapprove of the whole situation. The ship itself is barely holding together, boards warped with salt, sails stitched with so many patches, they look like pirate-themed quilts. You remember a historical tidbit about Greek ships being made with a type of soft pine wood from Mount Ida. Supposedly, it made repairs easier. Of course, that also made the ships flimsier. You don't feel reassured. This boat looks like it's already lost at least one dramatic sea battle, and is desperately trying to avoid another. A seagull lands on the railing and promptly poops beside you. A sign, maybe, though you're not sure of what. You drag yourself to the side and peer down into the water. Clear, blue-green, deceptively calm. The kind of water that says, "Come swim, it'll be fun," and then quietly kills you with undertow and jellyfish. The crew begins grumbling about food, about oars, about the strange man again. Someone jokes that he might be a demigod, or worse, a tax collector. Everyone laughs nervously. The man just smiles and says, "I'm going wherever this boat is going." Great. You really didn't want to be involved in divine business before noon. But that ship, pun fully intended, has sailed. Historians still argue whether this version of the Dionysus pirate story was a metaphor for the spread of the god's cult across the Mediterranean, or just a particularly trippy, wine-fueled parable. But you don't have time to debate theology with armchair philosophers. You're here, on the boat, with him, and you still haven't had breakfast. A sudden gust of wind caused the sails to lurch and flap, and the ship groans like it's offended by your presence. Someone grabs the ropes, another yells to adjust the rudder. You just sit there and hope you're dreaming. If you're lucky, you'll wake up in a nice cave with a decent hangover and a goat skin full of lukewarm water. But no, you're awake. You're tired. And the guy next to you, the one who smells faintly of figs and thunder, is definitely real. Welcome to your new normal. The day grinds on like an old olive press. You've slouched into some half-awake, sunburnt stupor, your brain floating in a brine of dehydration and existential confusion. The mystery man still hasn't moved much. Just sits there, occasionally humming to himself. It's not a tune you recognize. It's oddly harmonic. Like the music is unfolding from inside your skull. Definitely not great for your nerves. He doesn't eat. He doesn't drink. He doesn't even blink at the pirate who accidentally trips over a coil of rope and lets out a stream of curses that would make even Ares blush. And yet, no one touches him. It's like he's surrounded by some invisible force field of "don't mess with me." By midday, the sun is a furious white disk. The deck planks feel like oven grates. You try to shield your eyes and catch a glimpse of land, but there's nothing but water. It's the kind of heat that makes you seriously consider licking condensation off someone's flask, preferably someone you don't like. That's when the captain starts grumbling. "We should have sold him," he mutters, pacing along the bow. "Could have fetched a fine price at Naxos. Look at that robe, worth more than this cursed boat." The crew murmurs in agreement. You feel a twitch of alarm ripple through your stomach. This can't end well. Selling people, divine or not, tends to summon at least one thunderbolt. Now, Dionysus, as you've probably guessed, is not a fan of being kidnapped, especially not by sweaty men with questionable hygiene and zero appreciation for fine fabrics. But you're still not entirely sure if this is Dionysus, or just a remarkably well-dressed stowaway with killer hair. He finally speaks again, calm, pleasant, like he's ordering at a fancy seaside cafe. "Turn the boat around." That's it. 4 words, no threats, no dramatic thunder, no frogs raining from the sky, but something in his tone feels deep, heavy, like wet clay. The captain laughs, a short bark. "You givin' orders now, fancy boy?" The man, still sitting, still entirely unfazed, tilts his head. "You don't want to go where you're going." "Don't tell me what I want," the captain spits. "We're headed to Asia Minor. Good ports there, good markets." The man shrugs. "Suit yourself." You suddenly remember that fringe myth about Dionysus turning a ship's mast into a grapevine. Most scholars ignore it. It sounds ridiculous. But then again, so do most things in Greek mythology. And let's not forget, this is the same pantheon that gave us flying horses, women made of clay, and a guy who turned into a literal swan just to avoid dating apps. Around you, the air grows thicker, not hotter, heavier, like it's been soaked in honey. You taste sweetness on your tongue, like crushed berries. You sniff. Is that wine? One of the younger pirates blinks and stares at his cup. "Hey," he says, "my water just turned red." You edge closer and peek in. Yep, definitely wine. Dark, rich, and swirling as if it's alive. The man just smiles. "You should drink. You're gonna need it." The captain narrows his eyes. Is this a trick? Oh, definitely, the man replies. The crew starts whispering again, and not the friendly kind of whispering. This is the sound of minds unraveling, of second guessing, of that specific brand of pirate panic that comes right before the cannons come out. One pirate stumbles back from the rail. The sails! He gasps. Look at the sails! You do. And you immediately wish you hadn't. Vines. They're crawling up the masts. Real living vines. Thick and green and blooming with plump purple grapes. The sails themselves ripple like leaves. You're not hallucinating. Everyone sees it. The ship isn't just a ship anymore. It's turning into something else. Gods preserve us, someone mutters. Too late, the strange man says softly. They already have. Historians still argue whether this particular version of the story was meant to highlight Dionysus's role as a fertility god or as a god of madness. Frankly, it's probably both. There's wine, there are vines, and pretty soon, there's screaming. Because the next thing to change are the pirates. One by one, their bodies start to shimmer, like heat waves rising off stone, and twist. You blink, and where a man was standing a moment ago, there's now something else. Sleek, sinuous, slick, dolphins. You stare, slack-jawed, as the crew begins diving into the sea, not running, not screaming, just changing. Their shouts warp mid-breath into whistles and clicks. Fins sprout, eyes darken. They leap gracefully over the rails like they've always belonged to the ocean. A few manage to resist for a moment, clutching at ropes and sobbing. One looks you dead in the eye as he tumbles overboard, his scream cutting off in a spray of salt and bubbles. You inch backward, heart thudding. You're not sure whether to beg for mercy or join in the aquatic ballet. Only a few people are left on deck now. You, the man, who is very obviously Dionysus by this point, and the captain, who's collapsed against the tiller and is praying to a whole grab bag of gods, none of whom are returning his calls. Please, the captain wheezes. Please, I didn't know. Dionysus stands now, slow and measured, the air around him shimmering with invisible energy. You kidnapped a god, he says, still in that infuriatingly calm tone. There are rules, you know. You half raise a hand. For the record, I just woke up here. Totally innocent. He glances at you, smiles. I know. That smile. It's not cruel. It's not forgiving. It's just ancient. The last remaining pirate gives in, his limbs flowing like water. Another dolphin. Gone. The boat shudders once, like it's exhaling, and stills. All is quiet except the soft slap of waves and the far-off laughter of dolphins. Your former shipmates, now frolicking in the wake like it's all one big cosmic prank. You sit down, hard. This was not how you thought your day would go. Dionysus stretches, cracks his knuckles. Well, he says, now that that's sorted. He plucks a grape from one of the vines still crawling across the sail and pops it into his mouth. You blink up at him. What? Happens now. He grins, grape juice staining his teeth. Now we find an island. The ship, no longer crewed, no longer really a ship, drifts quietly under a sun that has mellowed just a touch. The vines remain. Grapes hang in lazy clusters from the rigging. The mast creaks, not from wind, but from growth. You swear it just got thicker. Sap oozes where rope once wrapped. You sit on a bench made from what used to be a storage crate. The crate has sprouted moss. Dionysus, still barefoot, still radiant, hums again. You realize the tune is changing the rhythm of the waves. The ocean listens to him. It pulses in sync. That's deeply unsettling. You lean back and let the salt air fill your lungs. You've accepted your fate. You've seen pirates become dolphins. You've seen wine materialize from wood. You've witnessed a man sprout a vineyard out of thin air. Honestly, you're too tired to fight whatever's next. Where are we going exactly? You ask, not entirely sure you want an answer. Dionysus stretches his arms wide like he's embracing the sky. Wherever we like. That's vague. He laughs, a rich, heady sound like the first sip of strong wine on an empty stomach. Everything worth chasing is vague. That doesn't help. The sails flap gently, though there's no wind. You realize you haven't seen the stars in days, or maybe it's only been hours. Time is weird now. It's behaving like a drunk cat, unpredictable and mildly condescending. At some point, 10 minutes, 10 years, a shape appears on the horizon. You blink. Land, an island, a mirage, probably a mirage. But Dionysus points, triumphant. There. Perfect. You squint. It's green. Rocky. Trees burst out of cliffs like they're trying to escape the rock. There's a soft mist hugging the shore. No docks, no sails. Just nature, untouched. Wild. The boat, if you can still call it that, shifts direction on its own. You don't touch the rudder. Nobody does. As you approach, details emerge. Olive trees, marble outcroppings, bees. You can hear them from here, buzzing lazily like they too have been drinking. Is this Naxos, you ask? Dionysus smiles faintly. You know your geography. You don't really, but you remember that name. A place of myth, a place of stories, a place where things begin and end with wine and confusion. The boat runs aground with all the grace of a sigh. No jolt, just stillness. You look down. Your feet are already in soft white sand. Somehow the boat dissolved beneath you. You look back. There's no ship behind you now. Just a trail of grapevines stretched across the sea like breadcrumbs for very refined sea turtles. Dionysus is already ahead, barefoot, robes flowing like wind itself. He doesn't look back. He walks into the trees, into the green, humming. You follow. The path through the forest is soft and spongy underfoot, like walking on a living sponge cake. The trees lean in, curious. Birds that don't exist anywhere else whistle tunes from branches dripping with fruit. Some of the fruit glows. You don't ask questions anymore. Eventually you come to a clearing. A small stone theater, ancient, ruined, yet pristine, nestled in the hills like a forgotten jewel. Vines curl through the columns. A single amphora rests in the center of the stage, sealed with beeswax. Dionysus gestures to it. In there, he says, is the first wine ever made. Pure, untouched, fermented under moonlight and thunder. You raise an eyebrow. You just carry that around with you? He shrugs. I'm sentimental. He sits on the edge of the stage. You do the same. For a moment everything is quiet. No dolphins, no chaos. Just two people and a bottle of very ancient wine. You stare at the amphora, then at the god beside you. So, what now? He looks up at the sky, where stars are beginning to emerge like spilled sugar across velvet. Now, Dionysus says, we drink. And then I tell you the story of Ariadne, of kings, of labyrinths, of crowns flung into the heavens. You nod, silently. It sounds boring, and long, and perfect. He uncorks the amphora with a flick of his finger. The scent hits you like poetry, old, earthy, divine. The stars listen, and the story begins. The wine is warm, not from the sun. This amphora has probably never even seen the light, but from something else, something ancient. You hold the cup Dionysus handed you and feel a pulse, like a heartbeat, through the clay. You sip. It tastes like memory, like 1,000 grapes pressed under moonlight and secrets. You are either hallucinating or you just understood a sonnet in a language you've never learned. Dionysus watches you with a grin that says he knows exactly what you're feeling. Good, right? You nod, too dazed to speak. And so, beneath the stars, in a forgotten theater on an island that doesn't care for maps, he begins the tale. It all starts with a girl, he says, swirling his own cup. Isn't that always the way? You lean back, letting your limbs grow heavy. You suspect the wine is doing something strange to your bones. But whatever. You're already stuck on a magic island with a wine god. What's a little structural recalibration? Ariadne, Dionysus continues, daughter of King Minos of Crete, sister to the Minotaur. Yes, that Minotaur. You blink. Wait, that's real? Real enough, he replies with a smirk. A boy with a bull's head, locked in a labyrinth so complex, even dreams couldn't map it. Minos needed a place to put his problems, and Daedalus gave him the perfect solution, an endless maze. A breeze stirs the olive trees. The stars blink. You hear a distant bellow, deep, echoing, not close, probably imaginary, hopefully imaginary. Ariadne, Dionysus says, was clever and kind and possibly very bored. She met a prince, Theseus, who was supposed to be sacrificed to the Minotaur, and instead of sighing dramatically and watching it happen like her father wanted, she handed him a ball of thread. Wait, she what? Thread, yarn, spindle, whatever. It's not glamorous, but it worked. He tied one end to the labyrinth's entrance, followed it in, found the Minotaur, stabbed him. Historians still argue whether he used a sword or a sharpened hairpin, which would be hilarious, and followed the thread back out. You sip again. The wine is beginning to feel like a warm blanket around your brain. She saved him, Dionysus says, and he promised to love her forever. They ran away together. She thought it was the beginning of a great romance. You exhale slowly. It wasn't. He shakes his head. He dumped her. Abandoned her on this very island. You look around. Here? Right here, Dionysus says, gesturing to the misty trees. Naxos. Left her sleeping on a beach like a bad breakup playlist. You're not sure if it's the wine or the quiet, but you swear the island sighs. What happened to her? You ask. I found her, Dionysus says. Broken. Furious. Glorious. His voice softens, almost reverent. I didn't want her to be a footnote in someone else's legend. I offered her immortality. You raise an eyebrow. Like actual immortality? He nods. Crowned her with stars. Literally. That constellation up there? He points at the sky. Corona Borealis. That's her wedding crown. She still shines. You tilt your head. The stars shimmer. One glints brighter than the rest. You smile, slightly dazed. That's kind of beautiful. It is, he agrees, and deeply inconvenient. People keep making stories about him. Theseus, the hero, and forgetting she was the reason the story exists in the first place. You hear the edge in his voice. Not angry, exactly, but something close to tired. Immortal tired. I like telling her story, he says, not because it's dramatic, but because she didn't need a throne. She became a constellation instead. The amphora gurgles as he pours more wine into your cup. You don't remember drinking it all. You suspect this vessel refills itself. So, you say, blinking slowly, are you always rescuing broken hearts? Dionysus grins. Only the interesting ones. You let that hang in the air, along with the scent of crushed thyme and lemon trees. Somewhere, a cicada strikes up a lazy chorus. And what happened to Theseus, you ask? Oh, he forgot to change the sail on his ship. His father thought he was dead and jumped off a cliff in grief. Classic Greek tragedy. You snort. So basically, karma, Dionysus raises his cup, to karmic justice and poor communication skills. You clink clay cups like old friends at a tavern no one remembers. Then from the trees, a rustle, footsteps. You freeze. Did you hear that? Dionysus doesn't move. Probably just one of the maenads. The what now? He waves a hand. My followers. They show up when the wine's good and the vibes are weird. Don't worry, they don't usually attack strangers. That usually does a lot of heavy lifting. But before you can worry more, the trees part. Out steps a woman, barefoot, wild hair, robes fluttering. She looks like she hasn't seen a city in centuries, and likes it that way. She says nothing, just smiles, tilts her head, and walks to the amphora. Dionysus hands her a cup without a word. She drinks, smiles wider, begins to dance, not in a staged, choreographed way, just movement, like the wind found a body. Another figure emerges, then another, dozens, all wild-eyed, glowing slightly, all moving in hypnotic rhythms. A forest full of maenads. You turn to Dionysus. Is this normal? He shrugs, utterly unfazed. It is now. And somehow you believe him. The night deepens, the stars watch, the wine flows, and the dancing doesn't stop. Not for a very long time. You wake up with wine on your tongue and moss in your hair. It takes you a moment to realize you're lying in a pile of grape leaves. There's a sandal in one hand. Definitely not yours. Around you, the maenads have vanished like mist, leaving behind laughter that hangs in the branches like leftover perfume. Dionysus sits nearby, sipping something bubbly from a silver cup. He looks completely unaffected, which frankly feels like a personal attack. Sleep well? He asks. You groan. I dreamed a tree tried to teach me the secrets of the universe. He nods. That's just Thalassa. She gets chatty when the moon's full. You sit up and squint at the sky, which now glows with that early morning gold pink that makes everything look suspiciously magical. Your head feels like a choir of satyrs held a drum circle inside it. You wouldn't be surprised if that's literally what happened. Dionysus stretches, languid as a cat. Anyway, I was about to tell you how I got kidnapped. You blink. Wait, you got kidnapped? He grins. Hard, by pirates. You try to picture it. The god of wine and chaos, tied up on a rickety boat by sweaty men in leather sandals. It's hard to imagine. See? They didn't know who I was, he continues, standing and brushing off his tunic. Just saw a soft-looking boy on the beach with a fancy robe and assumed I was royalty. You snort. Well, you do have that mysterious trust fund vibe. He nods proudly. Exactly. So they lured me onto their ship with promises of friendship or rescue. Honestly, I wasn't really listening. And the next thing I know, I'm surrounded by pirates with ropes and very bad breath. A cicada chirps in disbelief. So there I am, Dionysus says, leading you down a trail that definitely wasn't there yesterday. On a creaky old boat in the middle of the Aegean Sea, tied up and surrounded by men who think they've caught themselves a prince. You pause. You didn't just snap your fingers and escape? He laughs. Where's the fun in that? You follow him past olive groves and down toward a rocky shoreline where waves slap lazily against ancient stone. The path winds like a drunk serpent. No straight lines, no signs. Just the soft crunch of dirt underfoot, and the occasional feather drifting on the wind. I decided to let it play out, he says. See how long it would take for them to figure it out. The pirates were arguing about ransom prices, dividing imaginary gold, planning how to spend it. One of them wanted a bigger hat. That's when I started making things weird. You glance at him. Weird how? Oh, you know, he says casually. Wine bubbling out of the wood. Ivy growing through the planks. The sails turning into leopard skins. Standard stuff. You stop walking. Wait, the sails turned into leopards? He shrugs. They were very angry sails. You laugh despite yourself. Okay, that's excessive. Thank you, he says. I do try. Historians still argue whether the pirate ship incident was an early display of divine wrath or a cautionary tale against underestimating strangers on beaches, he adds. Some say it was metaphorical. Others think it was a warning about the dangers of ambition and poorly ventilated ships. You reach the beach. The sea stretches out before you like a giant satin sheet, all shimmer and hush. And there, half buried in sand and barnacles, lies the wreck of a ship. You approach it slowly. The hull is split. Ivy coils around the beams like lazy snakes. There are faint claw marks where the sails used to be. Dionysus kicks a seashell. They didn't last long. Once the ship began melting into madness, they panicked. Tried to throw me overboard. Big mistake. What did you do? I gave them a choice, he says simply. A moment of mercy. But pirates aren't known for their good decision-making. So they jumped. Into the sea? He nods. Poof! Dolphins? You stare. Wait, you turned them into dolphins? He holds up a hand. I gave them the opportunity to become dolphins. There's a difference. You sit on a rock, trying to process that somewhere out there in the Mediterranean, a pod of dolphins may or may not be former pirates who kidnapped a god and got rebranded as ocean clowns. That's a weirdly wholesome punishment. He smiles. Dolphins are playful, social, free. It's not revenge, it's transformation. You pause. Do they remember? His smile fades just slightly. That's the question, isn't it? The waves curl against the sand, whispering secrets in sea foam. A pair of dolphins leap in the distance, too perfectly timed to be coincidence. He doesn't wave, just watches them, eyes soft. Anyway, he says, brushing invisible dust from his sleeve. After that, I took the shipwreck, turned it into a vine-covered shrine, and had a nice nap. You glance at the ruins behind you. That shrine? Mm-hmm. It's sideways. He shrugs. So's life. The sun edges higher, bathing the beach in sleepy gold. Somewhere, an owl hoots, completely ignoring the fact that it's the wrong time of day. You close your eyes, letting the warmth press against your face. Why didn't you just show them who you were from the start? Dionysus doesn't answer right away. Because being underestimated is powerful, he says finally. Let people decide what kind of story they think they're in, then rewrite it. A breeze tugs at your sleeve. And because, he adds with a wink, sometimes it's fun to turn bad guys into aquatic mammals. You can't argue with that. The sea laughs softly behind you. Or maybe that's just the dolphins. The morning melts into noon like honey on warm bread. You're still sitting by the wreckage, brushing sand from your shoes, when Dionysus throws a pebble at your foot. Come on, he says, standing. You've seen the aftermath. Now let's find someone who remembers the before. You frown. You mean like an eyewitness? Exactly, he replies. There's a nymph nearby who saw the whole pirate fiasco. She lives for retelling it, has all the drama memorized, accents and everything. You raise an eyebrow. You hang out with theater nymphs? Please, I invented theater nymphs. You sigh and follow him inland again, past sun-dappled fig trees, and the occasional goat who looks just a little too judgmental. The air smells of thyme and sea salt, and the heat is starting to weigh on your shoulders like a sleepy cat. Did you really want them to change, you ask, as you walk? The pirates, I mean? Or were you just making a point? Dionysus tosses a stone from hand to hand. Transformation is never about what I want. I just offer the moment. Whether they leap or not, that's up to them. You nod slowly, even though you're not entirely sure you understand. A bee buzzes by with the confidence of someone on a tight schedule. Somewhere overhead, a hawk screams like it's late to an audition. After a while, you reach a clearing. In the middle is a pool, glassy and still. Ferns frame its edge, and fireflies flicker lazily even though it's broad daylight. Floating above the water is a woman with translucent skin and hair that moves like ink underwater. She hums a tune that keeps rearranging itself in your ears. Dionysus waves. Cleo! She looks over and rolls her eyes. Oh, you again. Cleo, meet my companion. Companion, this is Cleo. Story hoarder, gossip keeper, nymph of inconvenient truths. She gives you a nod, unimpressed. Let me guess, he told you the pirate story? You nod. He always tells that one. Probably left out the part where he got bored halfway through and started playing with the rudder like a fidget spinner. Lies, Dionysus says with a grin. You know I don't get bored. You turn the ship's ropes into garter snakes because someone sneezed too close to your cup, Cleo shoots back. Dionysus shrugs. Manners matter. She drifts a little closer to the shore. You want the real version? The one the dolphins still tell each other when no one's watching? You lean in. Yes, please. She smiles like someone about to unwrap something delicious. So, the ship wasn't just any pirate boat. It was a cursed vessel, stolen from a temple raid on Delos. Its mast was carved from a tree that had once been struck by lightning on Apollo's birthday. Already bad vibes. You blink. That's oddly specific. Facts should be, she says. But the crew? Bunch of amateurs. Half of them didn't even like pirating. One was a failed sculptor. Another just wanted to open a sandal shop. What didn't, she replies. They brought Dionysus aboard thinking he was a mortal prince. But the moment he touched the deck, things started to bend. Time hiccuped. Birds started flying backward. The ship's parrot began quoting Socrates. You look at Dionysus. You didn't mention the parrot. He shrugs. It wasn't my best work. Cleo continues, clearly in her element now. They tried to tie him up, but the ropes frayed. They tried to blindfold him, but the cloth turned into silk and slapped them. Every move they made, the ship got stranger. Water flowed up, bread turned into birds. One guy tried to mutiny and found his sword had turned into a banana. You grin. Still, historians argue whether the entire episode was divine intervention or a hallucination caused by spoiled figs and sea rot. Exactly, Cleo says. There's a theory that the ship was caught in a divine ripple, one of those mythic echoes that distort reality near sacred places. Others think Dionysus just felt like it. Dionysus nods. Both are true. You sit cross-legged on the grass, staring into the shimmering pool as Cleo keeps talking. She's like a dream with a voice, soft but persistent. Each word she speaks pulls more of the scene into your mind, the taste of sea air turning to honey, the pirates dancing without music, their eyes filled with wonder and panic. Here's what you need to understand, she says finally. Dionysus isn't the god of wine because he's fun at parties. He's the god of breaking what's rigid, of melting what's stuck. He doesn't destroy, he undoes. You look at him, and for a second, he's not a playful figure in a rumpled tunic. He's something older, wilder, a crack in the mask of the world. Then he sneezes and scares away a bird, and the moment passes. So, you say, stretching, what happened to the ship? Cleo grins. Eventually it unraveled, like a bad dream. Just pieces of wood and laughter left behind. Dionysus throws another pebble into the pool. It skips 4 times, then floats. Of course it does. You lie back on the grass, watching the clouds do lazy cartwheels overhead. Do you regret it? You ask. He's quiet for a moment. Then, no. Regret is a net. I prefer sails. You don't quite know what that means, but it makes you feel oddly calm. Maybe it's the sun. Maybe it's the stories. Or maybe it's that, out here, things don't need to make sense to feel true. Cleo hums again, and this time the tune sounds like the wind over a distant sea. The moment stretches, golden and strange. Dionysus stands. Ready to keep walking? You nod. The world shifts around you like a cloak being adjusted. Somewhere far off, a dolphin laughs. You and Dionysus leave the nymph behind, her laughter still echoing faintly as you wander back down the hill. She fades from sight the way steam vanishes from a warm mug. Present 1 second, gone the next. The air changes again, sharper now, tinged with cypress and olives. You pluck a fig from a tree as you pass. It's perfectly ripe, bursting with sweetness, but it also tastes slightly fizzy. You don't ask. You're starting to realize that nothing tastes exactly the way it's supposed to when Dionysus is nearby. As you chew, you glance at him. So what happened after the shipwreck? You just swam ashore? He laughs. Please, I had dolphins. You blink. You rode them? No, I called them. They escorted me, like very wet, giggling chauffeurs. He grins, but then his eyes get distant. One of them, Phalios, tried to harmonize with the waves, genuinely believed he could resonate the sea into enlightenment. You snort. Did it work? He swallowed a jellyfish and passed out. As you laugh, your sandals crunch against gravel. The path narrows into a stone-paved trail that winds down into a sleepy village, a scattering of homes nestled along a craggy coastline where time seems to have taken a nap and forgotten to set an alarm. Is this where you landed? You ask. Not quite, Dionysus replies, but someone here was there, back when the pirates met their poetic justice. You raise an eyebrow. Someone human? Technically. He pauses by a weathered door with chipped paint. You ever meet someone who's been alive so long they've stopped counting birthdays and started measuring time in types of bread? You frown. No? Well, prepare yourself. He knocks once. The door creaks open an inch, then groans open the rest of the way, as if it has opinions about being disturbed. On the other side stands a woman with silver-streaked curls, sun-kissed skin, and a clay cup in one hand. She eyes you both like she's already halfway through a roast. Back again, wine boy? Euryale, Dionysus says with a flourish, looking radiant as ever. You're 10 minutes late and 2 centuries early, she retorts, and your sandals are cursed. You glance down in alarm. Just joking, she says, deadpan. Come in. Inside, her home smells like herbs, baked stone, and the kind of wisdom that has been left on a windowsill too long. The walls are lined with old amphorae, bundles of drying lavender, and scrolls stacked like they're pretending to be organized. So, she says, settling into a chair, you want the version that doesn't end with dolphins and redemption poetry. You nod. Good, she says, because most people forget there were survivors. Your breath catches. From the pirate crew? Euryale back to Athens, changed their names, grew beards, tried to become philosophers. One wrote a scroll titled On the Madness of Salt. Dionysus smirks. That one was my favorite. Very dramatic. He thought seawater was haunted. Euryale snorts. He wasn't wrong. You lean forward. Do you remember what the other one did? Sold wine, she says, raising an eyebrow at Dionysus. Claimed it was blessed. Said it gave visions. Dionysus beams. Oh, that guy. I did bless his wine, just a little. He was nicer to his horses after. You glance between them. So, some of them did change? Euryale nods slowly. Change doesn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes it's quieter, like a boat not crashing into a rock that used to always crash into rocks. You sit back, trying to let that settle. Outside, a breeze rustles through olive branches. The light in the room has softened, golden now, like the hour just before dreams start to settle behind your eyes. Euryale leans back. You know what else people forget? What? That Dionysus didn't have to punish them. He could have left, disappeared in a poof of wine vapor, but he stayed, gave them a chance to look into his eyes and see something other than their own fear. Dionysus shrugs. Hope can be a dangerous thing. You frown. Why dangerous? Because once you see it, Euryale answers for him, you can't go back to not wanting it. Silence fills the room for a moment. Not heavy, just full. Then Dionysus stretches. We should go. Euryale stands, handing you a satchel of figs. Eat these before they try to tell you secrets. You hesitate. They do that? She winks. Only if you're lucky. As you step back into the fading sunlight, Dionysus tosses a fig into his mouth. I like her. She remembers the important bits. You follow him along the edge of a low stone wall, watching the sea beyond glitter like spilled treasure. So where to now? You ask. He grins, eyes flashing. You've heard the pirate story. Now I'll show you what they missed. The path ahead looks ordinary, but something about the way the shadows stretch, how the air hums faintly like the space before music begins. You know it's not going to stay ordinary for long. Also, Dionysus adds casually, have I told you about the time a statue of me came to life and tried to unionize the vineyard workers? You blink. That's not real. Historians still argue whether it happened or if it was just a prank played by a particularly bored satyr. You sigh. Of course they do. You walk on. Behind you, the village breathes its ancient rhythm. Ahead, the road curves toward something new, or maybe just something very, very old, pretending to be new for your benefit. The dirt road crunches beneath your feet, winding lazily along the coast. Dionysus whistles a tune that sounds suspiciously like someone trying to charm snakes who also hate music. Birds flutter overhead, and somewhere nearby, a goat makes a sound that suggests it's in the middle of an existential crisis. You glance sideways. So what exactly did they miss? Dionysus kicks a pebble into the grass. The pirates. Everyone focuses on the ship, the transformation, the divine vengeance. But they always skip what happened next. The aftershock. You raise an eyebrow. Wasn't that just you getting off the boat and laughing about dolphins? He smirks. Oh no, that was just Act 1. You round a bend and the world opens up. Broad fields speckled with wild flowers. Rows of ancient vines curling lazily toward the horizon. Bees hum. The breeze smells like sun-warmed thyme. And in the distance, a low, crumbling temple leans against the earth like someone halfway through a nap. Dionysus points toward it. That used to be a shrine, dedicated to me, built by the villagers after they saw the whole pirate-dolphin drama from the cliffs. You blink. Wait, people saw that happen? Oh yeah, tiny fishing community. They watched the whole thing, thought I was a god, which fair, and offered me honey and barrels of wine. I gave them a good harvest for 3 years and taught a few kids how to turn mushrooms into fireworks. You frown. That doesn't seem safe. It wasn't, but they loved it. As you approach the shrine, the air thickens slightly, not in a bad way. More like stepping into a room that remembers laughter. The columns are chipped, worn down by time and goats who don't respect architecture. A few vines snake up the base of a toppled statue. Its features long erased, but the shape is unmistakably him. Dionysus. So what happened here, you ask? He steps lightly over the broken threshold. People changed, some in small ways, started dancing more, laughing louder, others in bigger ways, like the mayor who gave away all his olives and ran off to live with a theater troupe. Is that true? Historians still argue whether he actually left or just built a stage behind his house and made everyone call him the Masked Wonder. You laugh. What happened to the pirates who escaped? You said they came here? One did, he nods. The one who sold wine. He came to this village years later, beard down to his chest, eyes too tired to lie anymore. Claimed he was just a traveler, but the elders knew. They could smell the guilt. So what did they do? Dionysus crouches by the statue, brushing dirt off the base. They let him stay, gave him a place to sleep, a job crushing grapes, and no questions. For 10 years he worked here, quietly, never drank a drop. Not until the festival. What festival? He gestures behind the shrine to a stone amphitheater nestled into the hillside. It's overgrown, half swallowed by grass and wild fennel, but still intact. You walk toward it as he speaks. Every year they'd hold a night-long celebration. No rituals, no sacrifices. Just music, wine, masks, and dancing. Pure chaos. Beautiful, joyful chaos. You can almost hear the echoes now. Flutes drifting on the breeze, feet stomping in rhythm. Someone giggling too hard at something that probably wasn't funny. The amphitheater still holds their shadows. On his last year, Dionysus continues, the ex-pirate showed up in a gold mask. No one knew it was him until he stood on stage and recited a poem so honest it made the river slow down to listen. You stare at the worn steps. What happened to him after? He left. Again. Disappeared into the hills. Some say he turned into a tree. Others say he became a wandering wine seller who only appears during eclipses. You blink. Is that real? Dionysus shrugs. Maybe. Sometimes myths are just people's feelings wearing costumes. You sit on a stone bench, letting the weight of it all settle in. The amphitheater is quiet now, but the silence isn't empty. It feels full, like the moment before someone lights a match. So what about you, you ask? Why did you come back here now? He picks a blade of grass and twirls it. To remember. The gods, we forget things, important things. Not because we're cruel or lazy, just because time keeps stretching and memory becomes wine. It sweetens, ferments, sometimes explodes. You nod slowly. Do you miss being mortal? He laughs, surprised. Every day. It's awful and lovely, like biting into a fruit that might be a plum or a tiny grenade. You grin. That's how I feel about papayas. You both sit in comfortable silence for a while. The sun slides lower, painting the sky in the warm colors of secrets not yet told. Finally, Dionysus stands. We should keep moving. You follow him up the slope behind the theater. Where to? I want to show you where the vines started. The vines? He gestures broadly to the landscape. This entire region was barren before the pirates. No one knows why. The soil was stubborn, the rain indifferent. Then I showed up, angry, soaked, half laughing, and everything bloomed. You frown. Are you saying divine rage is a fertilizer? He grins. Historians still argue whether it was divine intervention or just unusually good composting practices involving wild boar droppings and moonlight. You sigh. I need to meet your historians. As you walk, the hills start to change. More vines, grapes glowing like tiny lanterns in the dusk. The breeze shifts, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of crushed fruit and something older, like a song hummed by the earth itself. Here we are, Dionysus says, pointing to a large twisted vine wrapped around a gnarled tree stump. This one grew first, right after I stepped off the ship. No one planted it. You reach out and touch the bark. It's warm, pulsing faintly, like it remembers too. Does it still produce grapes? Only once every 10 years. They say the wine it makes shows you your happiest memory. You look at him. Have you tried it? He looks away. I'm not ready to see it. Silence again. Deeper. Softer. A bat flits by overhead. Somewhere, an owl asks a question no one wants to answer. Dionysus turns. Come on! I want to show you something ridiculous next. You laugh. Ridiculous how? He grins. Ever seen a satyr try to file taxes? You stare. You're lying. Am I? He says, walking ahead. Am I really? You have no choice but to follow. You follow Dionysus along a narrow trail, now bathed in the gold of late evening. The landscape around you flickers between the real and the mythical. One moment it's just a hill. The next it's a place where a god once danced so wildly The trees still lean slightly from the force of it. He turns over his shoulder. So, about the satyr and the taxes. You squint. Please tell me that was metaphorical. Oh no, dead literal. His name was Archelos. Very enthusiastic. Wore glasses made of tree resin and called himself a civic accountant of the vine. You stifle a laugh. That sounds surprisingly bureaucratic for a creature famous for drinking and dancing naked in forests. Exactly, Dionysus beams. He thought if satyrs ever wanted to be taken seriously by humans, they needed to establish fiscal records and wine excise forms. You glance around, half expecting a tiny forest tax office to appear. So what happened? Well, he managed to create a working economy for 3 weeks. Traded olives, figs, and goat songs. Collected taxes in the form of dance performances. Even printed a currency called the drunk ma. It was just polished grape seeds with faces carved into them. You snort. Did it work? Not really. One faun misunderstood and paid his entire vineyard in interpretive dance. Another tried to bribe a council with fermented honey and ended up marrying 3 nymphs by accident. Gods, you mutter. So where are we going now? Dionysus stops suddenly and points ahead. A clearing opens, revealing the ruins of what might have once been a round, open-air pavilion. Moss hugs the stonework. Ivy drips lazily from the broken arches. This, he says, stepping into it, is where the first unscripted revel happened. You raise a brow. Is that capitalized? Oh, definitely. It was never planned. One spring, the forest creatures just showed up. Someone started playing a flute. Someone else threw flowers in the air. Next thing you know, it was a 12-hour ecstatic fever dream. No hierarchy, no structure, no expectations. Just expression. You look around. The space still hums faintly. You can almost hear the distant trill of panpipes. The ground is soft with the memory of thousands of stomping feet. And you were here, you ask? Dionysus nods slowly. I was one of them. Not leading, not blessing, just joining. I needed it. There's something raw in his voice, a flicker of old exhaustion hiding under all the laughter and chaos. Why? He kneels in the center of the space, plucks a single violet flower growing through a crack. Even gods get overwhelmed by the stories they're trapped in. We're symbols, sure, but we also feel. And back then I was drowning in worship. He looks at you. Do you know what it's like to be prayed to by people who only want power, not joy? You shake your head. It's like being hugged by ghosts. Cold ones. Ones who demand miracles while fearing your laughter. You kneel beside him. The air still smells like wild mint and old stone. So what healed you? He holds up the violet. This, dancing, shouting, drinking too much wine and forgetting your name and remembering your heartbeat. The unscripted revels didn't ask for answers, just presence. You sit in silence, letting that truth settle. Do they still happen? You finally ask. He smiles faintly. Rarely. Sometimes in small towns during harvest. Sometimes when strangers gather under unexpected full moons and forget to be embarrassed. But mostly, no. Why not? Because everyone's watching themselves now, always performing. Even their joy is curated. The wildness has become a product. You don't answer, because you know he's right. Then quietly, could we start one? He looks at you, eyes suddenly brighter. You mean us, right now? You nod. A pause. Then he claps his hands once, loud and sharp. Immediately, the breeze shifts. From somewhere unseen, music begins. Soft, irregular, like someone plucking the strings of an invisible harp with their heart instead of fingers. Dionysus pulls off his sandals and tosses them aside. No structure, no rhythm, just move. You hesitate. Then you take off your shoes too, and you dance. You don't think. You don't worry if you're doing it right. You just let your limbs react to the sounds, to the pulse in the earth, to the way the stars are beginning to peek through the sky like curious onlookers. Dionysus spins, stumbles, laughs. You mirror him, badly, beautifully. Somewhere, a fire blooms. Not one that burns, but one that warms. And around the edges of the ruin, shapes begin to gather. Not threatening, just watching. A satyr with a pipe, a nymph with glowing hair, an old tree with eyes, a fox wearing a crown of thorns. One by one they step forward, join, dance. It is not a crowd. It is not a ceremony. It is a miracle made of rhythm and mistakes. You lose track of time. The sky deepens. The stars swirl. The moon hangs low and fat like it's had too much wine. Finally, you collapse into the grass beside Dionysus, both of you breathless and exhilarated. He grins sideways at you. You started a revel. You pant. You helped. I always do, but it only works when someone dares to go first. He pulls a flask from somewhere and hands it to you. It's warm and smells like fermented starlight. You take a sip, and for a brief moment, you remember a memory that hasn't happened yet. Laughing in a vineyard with strangers, your skin kissed by the sun, your name forgotten but your joy intact. You hand it back to him. He drinks, then sighs contentedly. You know, you're very good at this. At what? Letting go. You smile. I had a good teacher. In the distance, someone strikes a drum. The revel continues without you. And that's okay. You wake slowly, dew clinging to your skin like a second, cooler blanket. The music is gone, the dancers have vanished, and only the faint traces of footprints remain in the grass. Dionysus is sitting cross-legged near a crumbling column, carving something into the dirt with a stick. Good morning, mortal reveler, he says without looking up. Did you enjoy not being a responsible adult for a few hours? You stretch, joints creaking like ancient temple doors. I think I found muscles I didn't know existed, and lost some I thought were permanent. He grins, finally tossing the stick aside. That's the point. You woke up different, not better, just different. You glance around. So what now? Where are we heading? To the part where I get kidnapped by pirates, he says nonchalantly, like someone telling you they're about to go buy milk. Right. That little footnote in your very weird mythological resume. Oh, it's more than a footnote. It's an entire foot. You're not even sure that metaphor works, but you let it go. Dionysus gestures for you to follow him down a trail that winds toward the distant smell of salt and seaweed. The path narrows as you descend toward the coast, eventually opening to a sleepy, ancient harbor where time seems to drift lazily on the waves. This, he says, pausing dramatically, is where the dumbest criminals in history made the worst career decision of their lives. You look out over the calm water. They kidnapped a god? More like they saw a soft-looking young man with rich clothes and thought, let's sell him for wine money. Wait, you were in disguise again, weren't you? Dionysus throws his arms up. It wasn't even a disguise. I just wasn't glowing. I mean, what pirate sees a barefoot guy with a grapevine crown and thinks, yes, this is a safe business transaction? You laugh. Historians still argue whether the pirates genuinely didn't know who you were, or if they were just spectacularly greedy. Dionysus shrugs. Probably both. Greed makes people blind. Like, literally blind. One of them thought I was a princess. I was not wearing a dress. You follow him onto an old, creaking dock where a single boat sways in the tide. It's too perfect. Patched sails, weathered planks, and just enough barnacles to make it feel suspiciously theatrical. Did you recreate the pirate ship? You ask. He taps his nose. Technically, I asked the sea to remember it for me. You climb aboard. The wood groans underfoot like it remembers too. Dionysus lounges against the mast. So, he begins, I was wandering the coast after a little too much ambrosia. Just vibing, right? These pirates sail up and shout, "Hey, Prince Boy, want a lift?" You raise a brow. That wasn't a red flag? Have you met me? I see red flags and think they're party decorations. He stretches out, looking absurdly comfortable. Anyway, they lure me aboard with some line about a ride to Naxos. 5 minutes in, I realize they've got ropes and a cage and that special kind of awkward energy you only get when someone's trying to pretend they're not kidnapping you. You settle beside a barrel that might once have held olives. And you just went along with it? Oh, of course. I wanted to see how far they'd go. They started whispering about ransom and royal buyers. One guy actually rubbed his hands together like a cartoon villain. Another drew a map to some random slave market and immediately got into an argument about geography. You chuckle. So what did you do? I waited, watched, let them get cocky, and then once they set sail, I started making the wine overflow. You blink. Excuse me? I made all their barrels of water turn into wine, and then the deck, and then the ropes. Everything got sticky. The mast started sprouting vines. A leopard appeared out of nowhere. A leopard? And just sat there. Didn't even growl, just looked judgmental. You squint. Historians still argue whether that part is metaphor or just your signature style. Leopard was real, he says smugly. Also a dolphin or two. When the pirates realized something was off, they tried to throw me overboard. And that went well? Oh, hilariously. The moment they touched me, the ship groaned. Vines wrapped their ankles and the sails turned into silk. One guy jumped overboard in panic, and I turned him into a dolphin. You gape. Wait, that's why dolphins are so friendly? They used to be criminals, Dionysus says, dead serious. It's their community service. A seagull squawks from a piling. The boat sways a little more, and you swear you hear the faint sound of panicked shouting echoing across time. So, what happened to the rest of the pirates, you ask? I gave them a choice. Worship me, or swim. You wait. He grins. They swam. You nod slowly. And the ship? I sailed it to Naxos by myself. Had a delightful lunch, then abandoned it. The sea took it back, piece by piece. You look around at the weathered boat you're on now. So this isn't the original? Dionysus leans in, eyes twinkling. Or maybe it is. Maybe it sails every few centuries, appearing to mortals just long enough to remind them that no one ever really gets away with nonsense. You don't ask how the boat still floats. Instead, you sit quietly, watching the water shimmer. The sun is lowering again, staining the waves with molten gold. A dolphin breaches in the distance. You can't help but wonder what crime that one committed. The boat rocks gently beneath you, like it's breathing. In, out, perfectly timed with the rhythm of the tide. Dionysus is reclined on a coil of rope, chewing on a fig he absolutely didn't have 10 seconds ago. You lean against a barrel that smells suspiciously like ancient fermented grapes, and try not to think about whether it's ever been washed. So, you say, squinting toward the horizon, after you dolphinified a bunch of pirates and made wine ropes and judgmental leopards, what's next? Dionysus licks fig juice from his fingers. Ah, yes. My triumphant arrival on Naxos, island of sun, surf, and emotional recovery. You blink. Emotional recovery? He sighs dramatically, his eyes suddenly far off like a vintage cologne ad. Because that's where I met Ariadne. You straighten. Ariadne. As in the ex-princess who helped Theseus murder her brother and then got ghosted on a beach like last week's flip-flops. Exactly, he says, not even slightly offended by the bluntness. Poor thing. Abandoned by a dude she literally saved from a death labyrinth. Historians still argue whether Theseus meant to ditch her or just accidentally left her behind while not checking the beach. You squint. How do you forget a princess? Some say he was cursed. Some say he was just emotionally unavailable. Tomato, tometho. Dionysus pulls a second fig from nowhere and offers it to you. You politely decline. So you found her sobbing on Naxos? Oh no, she'd passed the sobbing stage. She was full-on furious, throwing shells at seagulls, shouting at waves, just absolutely raging. It was kind of impressive. You grin. And you were like, that one's for me? More like, that one looks like she needs a party and a hug. Dionysus leans back. So I threw a little festival on the beach. A little festival? Fire dancers, music, rose petals raining from nowhere. The usual. You laugh. Historians still argue whether it was an actual divine wedding or just you doing your typical Dionysus thing. Let them argue. Ariadne knew. We danced barefoot in the sand. The stars threw themselves into the sky just to watch, and the vines bloomed overnight. He pauses, a rare softness in his voice. She didn't just survive abandonment. She rewrote her ending. You sit with that for a moment. The boat creaks. A breeze flutters past, carrying the distant scent of pomegranates and pine. What happened to her after that? I made her a goddess, he says simply. Took her to Olympus. Gave her immortality. The whole package. Wait, she's still around? Dionysus gives a little smirk. Some say she became the constellation Corona Borealis. Others say she still walks the mortal world now and then, wrapped in sea foam and secrets. You shake your head. You're surprisingly romantic for a wine guy. He leans closer. Wine is all about love. Love of earth, of ritual, of letting go. I'm not the god of drunken frat parties, you know. That came later. You smile. Yeah, I guess frat houses don't usually have leopard chariots. Sadly, no. But they do try, he chuckles. They try very hard. You gaze at the sea again. The sun is nearly gone now, dipping beneath the horizon in slow motion, like it's reluctant to leave this story. Shadows stretch long over the deck. Somewhere in the darkening sky, the first star twinkles. Maybe Corona Borealis, maybe just a satellite. Hard to say. Do you ever miss it? You ask quietly. Miss what? The chaos. The wild nights, the pirates, the godhood. Dionysus doesn't answer for a moment. Then, godhood's funny. It's not about power. It's about permanence. Most mortals vanish after death. Gods linger, like wine stains, or glitter. You snort. So you're glittery wine stains now? Essentially. I show up when people pour the third glass and start telling secrets. I'm there when someone dances barefoot under a street lamp at 2 a.m. I'm the moment someone laughs so hard they cry. That's weirdly specific. He shrugs. I get around. You look over the rail. The water is darker now, almost black. The moon rises slow and wide, casting a silver trail across the sea like a path made just for you. You said Ariadne rewrote her ending, you murmur. What about you? Dionysus tilts his head. Oh, I've got plenty of endings, and none of them stick. That's kind of my thing. I die, I come back, I vanish. I reappear wearing a pineapple on my head and handing out honey cakes. I'm adaptable. A pause. Historians still argue whether your myths are just recycled stories from older gods. Of course they are, he says cheerfully. That's the point. I'm every celebration, every mystery cult, every person who said, you know what? Let's stop working and dance instead. You sit with that, feeling the boat bob, the moon rise, the world turn. You know, you say, I think I'm going to miss you. Dionysus flashes a grin. That's the thing, mortal. You never really leave me behind. He snaps his fingers. Suddenly, the boat begins to dissolve beneath you, not sink, not crack, but fade, like mist burning off under morning light. The sea doesn't roar. It hums. A low, rich tone, like a wineglass when you drag your finger around its rim. You float, not in fear, but in calm, until the stars above ripple and twist. One falls slow and steady and lands silently in the center of your chest. Your eyes close. And Dionysus whispers, "Next time you uncork a bottle and hear laughter before it begins, you'll know I'm there." When your eyes flutter open, if they ever really closed, you find yourself not on a boat, not even on the sea anymore, but reclining on something surprisingly soft. Moss? Clouds? Honestly, it might be both. The air smells like myrrh, rain on hot stone, and that fleeting trace of oranges someone peeled in another room. You're in a place that doesn't belong to time. A golden glow pulses lazily from the sky above, and seated beside you is, yes, Dionysus. This time dressed in a robe made of literal constellations, stitched together with threads of moonlight and sarcasm. "Welcome to the in-between," he says, swirling a goblet filled with something that smells like nostalgia and lemon zest. Most people don't get this far. You sit up slowly, brushing invisible glitter off your shoulder. I didn't think this myth had this many bonus levels. He smirks. It's a common mistake. Most mortals stop at pirates turn to dolphins and miss the real juice. But you stayed on the ride. You glance around. Trees sway where there shouldn't be trees, made of silver bark and leaves that hum lullabies. A stream gurgles nearby, chuckling to itself. "I've got questions," you say. "I've got vague answers." You consider, like, what really happened to you after the whole pirate Ariadne glory days era? Dionysus stretches, cat-like. "Ah, the centuries after. You know, there was a time I was everywhere. Rome loved me, called me Bacchus, gave me more parades than Caesar." Historians still argue whether Bacchus and Dionysus were ever truly separate gods. Of course they weren't. People just like renaming me to match the vibe. Wine in Greece is Dionysus. Wine in Rome? Bacchus. Wine in medieval France? Probably some guy named Jacques, pouring it from a questionable jug. I flow where I'm needed. You raise an eyebrow. And after Rome? Well, the Christians weren't huge fans. A party god with magic vines and mortal followers who disobeyed rules? Bit too much for them. So I got blurred, faded into cautionary tales and woodcut devils. Demonized? Oh, absolutely. Nothing scares a rigid society like liberation and glitter. Suddenly, I'm not just a fun wine guy. I'm a threat, a metaphor for indulgence and temptation. And poof, exiled to the margins. You run a hand along the moss cloud beneath you. It hums in approval. But you didn't disappear. He raises the goblet in a lazy toast. No god really dies. We just adapt. You frown. So where were you hiding? He leans in, his voice dropping like a late-night secret. In theater troupes and carnival masks, in forbidden feasts and secret societies, in every rebel song hummed under breath, every stolen kiss in a vineyard. I became a symbol of rebellion, of joy, of breaking the rules with a wink. Like punk rock? Exactly like punk rock, but with more leopard print. You laugh. He grins, then tosses a grape into the air and catches it in his mouth. There's even a theory I inspired early Christian rites. Miraculous wine, rebirth after death, the communal ecstasy of worship. Historians still argue whether early Christianity borrowed from Dionysian rituals. They did, he says too fast. Or maybe we just understand the same thing. People need transformation. They need stories to remind them they're not just flesh and chores and taxes. A wind stirs the stars above. One drops like a leaf and lands in Dionysus's hair. He doesn't notice. You know what I think, he continues. Mortals try so hard to stay in control. Timetables, boundaries, etiquette. But inside, you're all dying to dance barefoot in the mud. You smile. And you're here to give permission. Exactly. A pause stretches between you. The soft breeze whistles through the silver trees like flutes warming up for a concert. Then you ask the question that's been tiptoeing behind your tongue for the past 1,000 words. Are you still a god? He sighs, dramatic as ever. That depends on who's asking, and whether they're dancing. You tilt your head. I exist where belief lingers, he explains. If someone offers a toast to me, even half-jokingly, I wake up a little more. If someone chooses joy in the middle of sorrow, I show up. Sometimes wearing a hoodie, sometimes with a tambourine. You grin. So you're still showing up today? Oh yes. At weddings where nobody knows the couple's last name. In midnight kitchens with spilled wine and too loud music. I'm on stages, in parades, in moments when humans dare to be wildly joyfully alive. A beat. Even now, he says softly, in stories told before sleep. You feel a strange warmth stir in your chest, like someone lit a candle in your ribcage and whispered, "Remember joy." The trees begin to fade. The moss cloud drifts lower. I think it's time, Dionysus murmurs, standing and brushing celestial dust off his robes. We've nearly reached your exit. Wait, you say, standing too. Will I remember all this? He smirks. You'll remember the important parts, like how it felt, and maybe that bit about leopards on boats. And the pirates turned into dolphins? Oh, especially the dolphins. You smile. He steps back, raising 2 fingers in a lazy salute. Wherever you go next, don't forget to dance. And just like that, he vanishes. Not in a flash, not with a boom. Just a shimmer. Like mist under morning light. You close your eyes. The world tilts. Somewhere, far away, a dolphin laughs. Your feet hit warm stone, not hard, not cold, just pleasantly warm, like a sun-baked patio in late afternoon. You wobble slightly as if the weight of returning to gravity surprises you. Around you, olive trees sway in a rhythm that feels suspiciously choreographed. Off in the distance, a familiar hum floats through the air. Lyres, flutes, and someone attempting to harmonize with a donkey. You've landed in a vineyard. Of course you have. The sun sits low, dripping honey gold over the hills, while rows of grapes wind endlessly across the land. They shine like tiny lanterns, pulsing in clusters of green, red, and deep violet. The scent, a dizzy mix of fermented sweetness, cracked earth, and the unmistakable tang of festival sweat. A group of people dances nearby. They're barefoot, their clothes loose, flowing, and probably borrowed from 3 centuries ago. One woman wears a wreath made entirely of figs. A man spins in slow motion, holding a jug that should have been empty 5 twirls ago, but isn't. A satyr plays a double flute and winks at you without missing a note. You're not in the past. Not exactly. You're in Dionysus's memory, or perhaps his echo, playing on loop for anyone willing to step off the map. Someone hands you a cup. No label. No explanation. You drink. It tastes like confidence, and childhood summers, and that one time you belly laughed for no reason at all. You sigh. So this is what devotion looked like? A voice beside you says, it looks like chaos, but it felt like freedom. You glance sideways. Ariadne stands next to you, not as a statue this time, but as a woman made of dusk and defiance. Her crown still glows, softer now, like a memory catching fire. I thought you left, you say. I did, she replies. But stories don't. The music crescendos. Someone hits a tambourine like they're trying to wake the moon. The ground seems to pulse in time with the beat, and honestly, you might be imagining it. But who's to say what's real in a myth? You and Ariadne walk slowly along the vines. The crowd blurs behind you, and the path ahead narrows into something more intimate, quieter, even sacred. She gestures toward the hills. Dionysian rituals weren't just parties. They were acts of shedding. People came to release grief, roles, expectations, to forget the masks they wore the rest of the year. You nod. Like therapy, but with more wine and fewer disclaimers. Exactly. A cicada buzzes nearby, possibly the loudest creature in any mythological timeline, and you swat gently at the air. Ariadne laughs. Some say these ceremonies gave people back their souls. Others say it was just a cult with a great playlist. Historians still argue whether the Dionysian mysteries were religious or psychological phenomena. She pauses. But to the ones who danced, it was both. You step over a vine curling across the path. It moves, almost playfully, and you flash back to the boat. The snapping green tendrils, the pirates gasping mid-transformation, the deep calm in Dionysus's voice. You know, you say, he told me gods don't die. Ariadne smiles. We don't. Not as long as someone remembers the story. Even the boring ones? Especially those. You sit on a low wall made of ancient stone. In the cracks, tiny white flowers bloom, indifferent to time. Ariadne sits beside you. He wasn't always kind, she says softly. You look at her. He was chaos, she continues. Joyful, yes. Liberating, but also unpredictable. Being with him meant living without a net. You think of the boat, the vines, the pirates who never got a second chance. Did you love him? She exhales. As much as anyone can love a storm. You nod. She glances sideways. But I loved being seen, and he saw me when everyone else had written me off. You whisper. Theseus. Ah, the Athenian. Her lip curls slightly. Always the hero, until you need him. You both sit in silence. The music fades behind you. A breeze picks up, rustling the grapes in their delicate hammocks. She turns. Do you want to stay? You blink. Can I? This place, this memory, is a loop, a haven, but it's not life. It's a pause button. Tempting. I know. Another moment. A fig falls from a nearby tree, thudding softly on the ground. A goat trots by wearing a necklace made of spoons. You're not sure if that's symbolic or just goat fashion. Ariadne rises. The exit is ahead. You'll know it when you see it. You stand too. Thank you, you say. For what? For not being just a footnote. She grins. Don't thank me. Just remember. And with that, she turns, walking back toward the revelers, her crown of stars rising like a second moon behind her. You watch until she's gone. Then, heart oddly full, you turn toward the narrowing path once more, deeper into the vineyard, toward whatever waits beyond the next cluster of shimmering grapes. The path tightens like a drawstring, each step quieter than the last. You notice it suddenly, how the sounds fade, one by one. First the flutes, then the laughter, then even the buzz of insects, until it's just you and the soft crunch of dirt beneath your feet. You're walking through rows of vines that seem taller now. They arch overhead like tunnels, thick with leaves that filter the sunlight into a sleepy green glow. It feels like moving through the inside of a living dream. And then, there it is. A doorway. Not carved, not built, just there. A break in the vines where the light shifts unnaturally, more silver than gold, more moonrise than midday. It hums, just faintly, like the world holding its breath. You don't hesitate. Your hand brushes the edge of the vines, and as you step through, The warmth of the vineyard falls away like a blanket being gently tugged off. It's cold, quiet. You blink. You're in a cave now. The air is thick and heavy with the scent of damp stone and salt. Far ahead, you can hear water lapping lazily, echoing off unseen walls. Your feet move instinctively, bare now, though you're pretty sure you had shoes a moment ago. Each step echoes. You're not afraid, not really. Just awake. More awake than you've been all night. The cave opens wider and wider until you see it. A pool. Still. Deep. Moonlight, or something like it, filters in from above through a jagged hole in the ceiling. It catches on the water and scatters across the walls like glass. In the center of the pool floats a boat. No sails, no oars. You walk to the edge and sit. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because there's a quiet invitation in the air, like the scene is waiting for you to watch. And then, as if summoned by memory itself, a shape begins to form on the far side of the pool. Dionysus. He doesn't walk in dramatically. He's just suddenly there, barefoot, half smiling, with a tangle of ivy over one shoulder, and a look in his eyes like he's already bored of being worshipped. He walks to the edge, crouches, and touches the water. It ripples, but instead of distorting his reflection, it reveals it. Another Dionysus, in the water this time, younger, sharper, maybe even sober. You're watching a memory. The young Dionysus stands on a boat. Yes, that boat. The one with the pirates, the one with the screaming and the vines and the unfortunate dolphin endings. But this is just before that. The moment before the chaos. He looks uncertain. He's watching the pirates argue, unaware he's being watched himself. You lean forward. You can see the tension in his shoulders. He's choosing whether to reveal himself, whether to become the god or stay a passenger. The real Dionysus beside the pool watches too, silent. Maybe he's remembering what it felt like to not know, to wonder if the world would believe you when you finally showed them who you were. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was a late addition to the Greek pantheon, you murmur, or a much older deity forced into a new shape. He glances at you. They argue many things. They always will. You're startled, he responds. But none of it matters to the pirates, he adds, smiling faintly. They only care what happens next. In the water, the vines begin to stir. You brace yourself, but Dionysus lifts a hand. Enough. The vision halts. The water stills. He looks at you, suddenly serious. You've followed far, he says. Farther than most. You nod. I needed to see it through. To see me through? He asks. Maybe, you admit. His eyes soften. You came for the chaos, but you stayed for the questions. There's something sad in his smile now. I used to think being worshipped would be enough, that the wine, the music, the madness, that it would fill the space inside me. You wait. It didn't. You shift slightly. What did? He looks up at the hole in the ceiling where the light still spills down like a spotlight left on too long. Being remembered, he says, even by someone who doesn't know why they care. You sit with that. It's heavy. You stand slowly and step toward the boat, which somehow has drifted near the edge. Dionysus doesn't stop you. As your hand touches the hull, the cave begins to fade. Not all at once, but like steam slipping from a mirror. You're not afraid. You've seen enough. Just before the cave vanishes completely, you hear his voice again. Tell them the story, he says. I will. Even if it's boring, especially if it's boring. The light folds inward. The cave disappears. You're floating again. Not in water, not in air, but in a space between dreams and waking. You don't feel weight. You don't feel time. You only feel the story. A god trapped on a boat with pirates. A goddess abandoned. a festival of wild freedom, and somewhere, someone remembering it all, not for glory, not for meaning, but just to keep the thread from snapping. The story, after all, isn't really about Dionysus. The thread stretches, thinner and thinner, almost too faint to feel, but you hold on. You're drifting downward now, gently, like a feather spiraling toward the ground. Only there's no wind, just stillness. No sound except the occasional whisper of something soft brushing past, like silk over skin. You open your eyes, you're back on the sea, same boat, same moon, same stars that look just a bit too arranged to be accidental. But the pirates are gone. No dolphins, no vines, no chaos. Just you, and Dionysus, seated across from you. He's quieter now, like the volume's been turned down on the god part of him. His wreath has slipped slightly, one grape dangling like a punctuation mark on the night. "Do you know why I let them take me?" he asks, voice so low it barely disturbs the silence. You shake your head. "To see what they do with the story," he says. "It's easy to be worshipped, harder to be misunderstood." You raise an eyebrow. "So the whole thing, the pirates, the storm, the dolphins, was just theater?" He laughs softly. "Isn't everything?" You think about that. About how much of life is just pretending to be what others expect. Even gods, apparently. "Historians still argue whether Dionysus was ever real," you say, testing the words like skipping stones. "And what do you think?" he asks. You glance over the edge of the boat. The water is still and dark, but it doesn't feel empty. More like it's waiting. "I think you're real enough," you murmur. He smiles. Close enough to touch, far enough to forget. The boat rocks gently beneath you. "So what happens now?" you ask. He shrugs, looking out at the sea. You wake up. You go home. Maybe you remember a little bit of it. Maybe you tell someone the story. Maybe they roll their eyes. Or maybe, just maybe, they dream about it too. You look down at your hands. They're glowing faintly, like they're catching moonlight even though your palms are facing away from it. "And you?" you ask. Dionysus stretches out on the deck, hands behind his head. I drift. I wait. Sometimes I show up at parties where no one expects me. Sometimes I get bored and plant a vineyard in a desert. Sometimes I ride dolphins for fun. Immortality's a long time to fill. You can't help it. You laugh. It's the kind of laugh that starts in the chest and trickles out in a sigh. He watches you, eyes half-lidded. "Can I ask you something weird?" you say. "Only if it's deeply strange and slightly rude," he replies. "Why wine?" "Why not? I don't know, chocolate, or laughter, or naps?" He chuckles, the kind of deep warm laugh that smells like fireplaces and spilled Cabernet. "Because wine is all of those things," he says. "It's joy, it's sorrow, it's forgetting and remembering, it's excess, it's silence, it's the blood of grapes and the breath of the earth, it's messy." He grins. "And so am I." You nod, understanding more than you can explain. The boat is drifting again, slowly. The stars above you spin ever so slightly. You can almost hear them. Then Dionysus sits up suddenly. "One more thing," he says, pointing to a spot just behind your head. You turn. There, hovering in midair, is a grape. Just one. Perfect. Plump. Floating like it's suspended by an invisible thread. You look back at him. "Take it," he says. You reach out, expecting it to vanish, but it doesn't. It rests in your hand with surprising weight. Cool, heavy, vibrating with something. You hesitate. "Will it turn me into a dolphin?" "No promises," he says with a wink. You pop it into your mouth anyway. It's sweet, sharper than expected. Not just fruit, history. It tastes like ancient dirt and sunburnt festivals, like unspoken prayers and whispered rebellion, like every story someone once told just to make someone else smile. It tastes like Dionysus. And as you chew, the boat begins to dissolve. Not sink, just unravel. Like fabric pulled at the seams. Dionysus leans back again, fading like mist in the morning. "Don't forget," he says, voice echoing in every direction. "I won't." Even if it's boring, especially if it's boring. The stars collapse inward, folding into themselves like paper. The sea disappears next, rolling back like a scroll. The boat becomes lines, then dots, then nothing, and you are still, suspended, cradled by the dark. Your breath is soft, even. The edges of your thoughts blur. It's over. You made it, and now the wind down begins. So you let go. Of the boat, of the wine, of the vines, the pirates, the questions, of everything that filled this curious little myth, whether it made perfect sense or not. You feel yourself drift lower, like warm air is lifting the last of your tension, unwinding you gently. Your arms are heavy. Your face slackens. Your thoughts slow to a gentle crawl, like lazy waves in a midnight harbor. The sea fades, the stars dim. The echo of Dionysus's laughter stretches farther and farther behind you. Soon, even your own breathing feels distant, like it's happening to someone else. A soft, steady rhythm playing somewhere down the hallway of your mind. You let it lull you, comfort you, wrap you in that safe, ancient hush. And somewhere far off, just before sleep folds you in completely, you feel one final thought whisper across the water. Stories don't need to be loud to matter. Some just need to be told. Softly. Sweet dreams.